Welcome to Sharp Football Analysis. Today, Rich and I will discuss the fallout from the trade deadline, my one true love, Kyle Monangai, and preview some games of Week 10, so make sure you stick around. What's up, everybody? This is Sharp Football Analysis. Rich and I are here to get you ready for Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Just blowing by this season, Week 10 already. Before we do that, I wanted to tell you about a great offer. If you've been waiting to get on board and join us this season, this is your best opportunity. We just prorated up prices on all of our products, dropping the price by over 30%. On top of that, we're going to give you an extra 25% off on any of our season-long packages. You can get all of our premium fantasy football and betting content for the best price of the year. Just go to sharp.football, pick the package that's right for you, and use code SAVE25 when checking out to take advantage of this offer. That's SAVE25. All right, Rich, let's get into it. Let's talk about the trade deadline, a trade deadline that was more exciting than most normal trade deadlines. Not as much from a fantasy perspective. There was some fantasy fallout, but the Jets went wild. The Cowboys went wild. The Colts made a potentially a big and interesting addition that tells us a little bit about what they think about Daniel Jones, which we'll be talking about Daniel Jones here in just a little bit. But an interesting trade deadline that I don't think we normally get from the NFL, but I guess is becoming more and more the usual as trade picks up in the league.
Yeah, we're starting to see it. Sean McDermott doesn't want it to happen, but it makes sense. It makes sense for these teams to be either one, be aggressive, or teams to dump salary and accrue future draft picks and future capital. So it's been nice the last couple of years. Teams are starting to wake up and be aggressive, and we do like that. And I was really grateful this year that I didn't have to go backtrack on any moves. I was worried, because I always do the games. I'd start with the Thursday game because that's the first game of the week, and I kept saying, I was like, man, I'm not even going to write up Jakobi Meyers. I'm going to wait and see what happens. And because I was like, I just felt that I was like, it makes all the sense in the world for them to trade this guy. He's been trying to get out for literally since August.
Yeah.
And so I didn't write him up. So I didn't have to backtrack on anyone. We had the Shaheed trade before I got to that game as well for both sides. So it was nice to kind of just be able to write some things up as it transpired that day on Tuesday.
Speaking of Meyers, I thought that the Meyers trade, we talked last week about, him being one that we fully expected to be moved. And obviously that's what happened. And when we were talking about it, I was saying I couldn't find a spot that really excited me from a fantasy perspective. But then Travis Hunter is now on injured reserve. Brian Thomas Jr. We record this on Thursday morning again, as we say, because last week we did a whole thing about Travis Hunter and then he got hurt on Thursday in practice. So, that's not ideal for us, but we record this on Thursday morning. So obviously I have the Travis Hunter injury. It doesn't seem like Brian Thomas Jr. is going to play this week. Although Adam Schefter said that he had the lowest high ankle sprain that he's ever seen. There's never been a lower high ankle sprain than the one that Brian Thomas Jr. has. But it doesn't seem like he's going to play. And so suddenly the Jaguars do need targets, right? Parker Washington was obviously a popular waiver ad, Penn State legend Parker Washington. I still kind of support that based on some of the stuff that we've heard. But I thought it was really funny that after they traded for Jakobi Meyers, GM James Gladstone said that Meyers is, and I'm using quotes here, superpower was just catching the ball, which what a damning indictment of the Jaguars receiving core.
Yep.
That Meyers just being a guy that, I don't know, an NFL receiver that catches the ball when it's thrown to him is seen as such a superpower. But there is an opportunity here in this offense for Meyers for sure.
Yeah, 100%, especially the immediate fallout, like you said. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., not only does he have the lowest high ankle sprain, this is his third injury already this year. I mean, he was dealing with the wrist injury to open the year, had the shoulder injury in London. He's just been beaten up. It's his play has been down this season too. Him and Trevor Lawrence just haven't had a real rhythm at all. Jaguars also lead the NFL in drops. Paired that with, Trevor Lawrence having a bottom 8 in accuracy rate, that's how you get his completion rate under expectation, being only higher than Caleb Williams this year. That marriage, it was not quite Anthony Richardson adjacent, but this happened to Anthony Richardson last year in a different capacity, where it's the Colts dropped a bunch of passes, and then every one time he made a good throw, or he also had the highest inaccurate throw rate. So that marriage just cratered his completion rate. That's what's happening with Trevor Lawrence a little bit. And Diami Jones had or Diami Brown. So I was looking at Tim Jones's name and then combined him. But Diami Brown had a concussion last week as well. So they are really thin. Like they were going to potentially rolling out like Austin Trammell and Tim Jones. Tim Patrick also was inactive last week. So they were just hurting. Edgar Bennett, the wide receiver coach for the Jaguars, was with the Raiders the previous 4 years. There's some familiarity with Jakobi Meyers. And then Liam Cohen answered the question for us that like I kind of raised the trade. It was like, all right, well, who's going to be the slot receiver? And I kind of wrote it up when they made the trade as like, I would assume that Myers is going to play outside because he did that after the Devontae Adams trade last year. He's more familiar playing outside. And then Liam Cohen said that Parker Washington will remain the slot receiver. So we've already got that clarity as well. So it seems like it makes a lot of sense for this to be a rental. Jaguars, 2 games behind the Colts in the division. Like they're trying to make the playoffs. It makes a ton of sense to just get a body and a pass catcher here that's needed.
I will say some of the interesting stuff, like everything makes sense here for Myers, like you said, with the injuries and everything. It was interesting to see that the Jaguars, and maybe the injury stuff had something to do with this, the Jaguars really shifted to the run coming out of their bye week. They were 9% under their expected pass rate in that game. I'm interested to see like what that turns into, especially when Brian Thomas comes back, assuming he comes back and it isn't, what, like you said, his third injury in a bad year. Do they just want to, let it play out? I assume he comes back because they're trying to make the playoffs. Diami Brown, like we'll see when he comes back. Like as they get healthier, Brenton Strange, I believe he's eligible to return next week. And so as they start to get those guys back, we'll see what happens. But I did think that change out of the bye of shifting more run heavy was interesting moving forward. And the other part about the slot thing with Parker Washington is that he has been better out of the slot. Like it's not dramatic that he's been better out of the slot. It's like it's 1.77 yards per out run to 1.42. But the other thing about Washington is he just gets a lot of targets. He is a target drawer, has been a target drawer this year. So ultimately, like as this all works out, if Jakobi Meyers is going to be playing more outside, even when Brian Thomas comes back, it looks like Washington's going to have that role. So ultimately, I think this is a reasonably fine development for Parker Washington, especially if you picked him up this week. The one thing I will say is I don't know how excited we are about anybody this week going up against Houston. Like that's not somewhere that you're really, really looking to attack. They've allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to receivers over the last 5 weeks. Fantasy Points, our friends over at Fantasy Points, have them as the toughest defense over that stretch against opposing receivers when you adjust for schedule. So like, I don't know how excited you are about rolling Parker Washington out there this week, or certainly Jakobi Meyers in his first week. But there is at least a ramp here to production for both of those guys as we wait to see what happens with Brian Thomas Jr.
Well, I mean, the teams on bye this week, outside of the Titans, are filled with receivers we were playing. So there are probably a lot of teams that are into the bag this weekend, elevating a receiver to their starting lineup.
Yep. Yeah, possibly. And how dare you not think I'm playing Chimere DK in fantasy? Obviously, I'm playing him in fantasy. It's what I do. You mentioned Rashid Shaheed, and I think that one's very interesting. Maybe more from a real football perspective than a fantasy football perspective because of what this Seahawks offense has been and how run heavy they've been whenever they're able to control games. It seems like they're a very good team that's going to be able to do that moving forward. But I mean, like this is a perfect fit in an offense that Shaheed obviously knows from working with Clint Kubiak. He's going to average 1 billion yards per catch, like 1 trillion, like just every catch is going to be a touchdown for him. This is a perfect real football landing spot for Rashid Shaheed. I don't know how many targets he's going to get, and that is a concern, but ultimately I think he's going to make a lot of big plays.
Yeah, and I still think he'll just be a guy that you probably end up just like thrusting into lineups as saying like I'm just going to leave him in and not play, like try to guess when he's going to have the long catch, right? And he could have consistency with the way this offense has been playing. There's plenty of targets for at least target share for Jackson Smith-Njigba to have. I mean, he's got 50% of the team's air yards. He's the most yards per route run of any receiver to this point of the season since that data has been tracked. Like he can actually regress and still be really good, and that can give some opportunities for a guy like Rashid Shaheed. I would also expect him to earn more targets than Cooper Kupp was at that point. Like Cooper Kupp was at 4.7 targets per game. So like if you can get Shaheed like anywhere from like that 4.5 to 6 targets per game, he can still be a guy that offers a lot of upside as like that boomer bust wide receiver 3, wide receiver flex. Because when he does catch touchdowns, like you said, they're probably going to be 40 plus yards out. I mean, last year with Clint Kubiak at the start of the year, I mean, he had touchdowns of 59, 70, and 43 yards. And that was a relatively low volume passing game as well. And he was at 18 yards per catch and had over 70 receiving yards in every game but one that Derek Carr played before his injury. So I don't necessarily think that's like, it's really like even a spot where you're like, you look at the targets and you're like, all right, well, like he's just not going to have any volume. I think his quality of target's just going to go massively up than this transition from the Saints. So I actually think it is more of a pro for him from a fantasy stance than arguably than you would have been comfortable playing with the Saints, even on 30 routes per game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You're in a much better spot, a much better offense. When he gets those targets, they're going to be higher quality, and they're going to be more, they're going to be down the field in an offense that just scores touchdowns. Every time they throw the ball, at least against the Commanders, they score a touchdown, I think. I love the level that JSN has reached in which his kind of ho-hum 129 yards on 8 catches was like, people were like, oh, that's kind of a disappointing outing. You're like, my guy had 130 yards and 8 catches. Like, what are you doing? But
yeah, well, when Cody White's scoring touchdowns and your guy isn't, I get it.
One more name that I did think was interesting to mention out of the trade deadline was AD Mitchell, who ended up going to the Jets as part of that Sauce Gardner trade. I don't think that probably is going to matter much this year. They want to run the ball. Garrett Wilson, it seems like, it's going to be back this week. Again, we record on Thursday morning. We haven't seen all of the practice reports, but it seems like it'll be back. I still think Mason Taylor probably finishes second on that team in targets the rest of the way. And so maybe Mitchell ends up being third there. But like ultimately, I think AD Mitchell is good. Every time we've seen him play, he gets targets, he draws targets. And if the Jets can figure out the quarterback situation next year, like I really like AD Mitchell's dynasty upside coming out of this, especially after it seemed like all of the bridges were burned in Indianapolis. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think this is ultimately a good thing for AD Mitchell. Maybe not this year, but ultimately I think it was a good thing.
It's at least another lifeline. I mean, if you were an AD Mitchell dynasty gamer, you had no path really for him right now. Like he was roadblocked on his rookie contract. It's still Michael Pittman's under contract. Alec Pierce is a free agent, but like the way he's playing, they might emphasize, renegotiating a contract for him. So like at least he's going to be a wide receiver 2, potentially going into next year in a team that will probably have a new quarterback. So like you at least are drawing life of your guy, like getting opportunities.
If they do not have a new quarterback, then everybody needs to be fired. That's what I would say.
He's the opposite of probably Rashid Mitchell though. Like he might be getting some more targets than he was earning right now, but his quality of target will go way down.
It's not going to be ideal
for at least rest of this season. But
I would say he's going to get more targets because he was getting 0 targets.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's going to be more than that. But yeah, no, it's not good. So that's a trade deadline. Unfortunately, did not see Breece Hall to the Chiefs. I know we all wanted it. We all wanted to see it, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So, but some interesting moves, I would say, more interesting moves than we normally see in a trade deadline. All right, let's move on to agree or disagree. Before we do that, though, let's bring in Warren Sharp for the Sharp Football PrizePicks lineup for Week 10.
It's time for us to build this week's PrizePicks lineup and turn $100 into $600. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports with their easy-to-use app. And now you can play $5 and get $50 instantly in lineups when you use code Warren after you download their app. All right, let's dig into this week's lineup over at PrizePicks. As a reminder, your first $5, you'll get $50 added to your account. So make sure you take advantage of it by clicking the link below. Let's dig in. We're going to do 3. We are up $1,000 on the season, sharing these PrizePicks lineups with you every single week. We give you 3. And this one, again, we're trying to turn 100 into 600. Let's dive in. First up, we've got Rachaad White to have less than 46.5 rushing yards. This is something that White has done every single game except one since week 2. I understand that he is the lead back right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you can look at the game log. He's only gone over this once, and that was a 17-carry game against the San Francisco 49ers in which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won by 11 points. I don't expect them to beat the New England Patriots by double digits. I don't expect Rachaad White to have as many rushing attempts in order to get over this number, and the New England Patriots have an outstanding run defense. So this is a brutal matchup in a game that this guy hasn't even gone over this number or come close in many cases for several weeks. So we're going to fade him and go less than 46.5 rushing yards. Next up, we've got Dalton Kincaid, more than 38.5 receiving yards. Dalton Kincaid is in a great matchup here. He's going up against the Miami Dolphins. Miami is giving up 6.3 receptions per game to tight ends, allowing 8.9 yards per target to tight ends. That ranks 28th in the NFL. The 83% catch rate to tight ends ranks 29th in the NFL. And tight ends have 31% of the receptions allowed by the Miami Dolphins overall. That's the highest rate in the NFL. Now, the question becomes, will they need to throw the ball enough to get Dalton Kincaid over this number? I believe the Buffalo Bills will have to throw the ball enough. In fact, we're looking at some alt overs here because I think that he's going to be targeted in this matchup. They played earlier this year, and he had 5 receptions for 66 yards in a win. That was a double-digit win at home against the Miami Dolphins. Here, Josh Allen is on the road as a 9.5-point favorite currently. And given those odds, Josh Allen's only covered 1 out of 6 games on the road, laying at over 9 points, which he is right now. So this game might be a little bit closer, or at least close to what the spread is indicating, which means that Dalton Kincaid might be needed as a receiver. Last up on our list, we're going with Justin Fields, less than 178.5 passing yards. Now, I know the weather could be a little bit questionable. I don't know exactly what the weather is going to be. Sometimes you look at the forecast and it's indicating a little bit of rain in New York on Sunday, but we're several days away. So that's not the premise of this at all, but that could only help us if that weather does end up happening. The premise behind this one is that Justin Fields is either less than 100 passing yards in games, or he's well over 200 passing yards in games. He doesn't really have any in between here. So I don't care if this drops to 175.5, 171.5, 170.5. There's really no games that Justin Fields has ever finished in 2025 where he threw for between 100 and like 205 yards. Not a single game. So I'm looking at a matchup against the Cleveland Browns, who are number 1 defending running back passes and are number 4 defending tight end passes. In all the games that Justin Fields has ramped up and gone over 200 yards, it's been in games that he's been trailing big and has come back in garbage time and had a really high tight end target rate. We're talking about games against the Bengals, the Steelers, the Dolphins, and the Dallas Cowboys. Those teams all rank 20th or worse defending tight ends, especially the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals rank 26th and 30th defending tight end passes respectively. And as I mentioned, the Cleveland Browns ranked number 4. So Justin Fields is going to have to be going after his number 1 wide receiver, and it's just not really the style that they choose to come out of the gates with, is having Justin Fields throw the ball in the first half, targeting downfield wide receivers. It's just really anti-Aaron Glenn with the way that they've been managing Justin Fields so far this season. So I don't see the Cleveland Browns winning with massive margin, forcing Justin Fields to give up all the rushing and just throw the ball. And as a result, for all these reasons, it looks like it's a good look to go less than 178.5 passing yards for Justin Fields. Combine all 3 of these together, $100 to win $600. As I mentioned before, we are up $1,000 playing with PrizePicks so far this season. If you want to play with us and try to turn $100 into $600, just click on the link below. You can sign up, download their app, sign up for PrizePicks, and they will give you $50 in lineups instantly as soon as you place your first $5 lineup. Keep in mind, PrizePicks is available in states like California and Texas, some other spots that you might not be able to be betting on sports, but you can play with PrizePicks. So do it with us this week. Download the app, sign up, and let's try to turn 100 into 600.
All right. Agree or disagree? It's my favorite game. It's Rich's least favorite game, where I throw out a statement and Rich either has to agree or disagree with that statement. And coming off what we saw last week against the Bengals, there's only one person that I would start agree or disagree with. My one true love, a person I have in 50% of Best Ball Mania teams, which means he's elevating all those teams from 10th place to 8th place. And I really appreciate you for that, Kyle Monangai. I appreciate you. But my statement, I guess, would be Kyle Monangai has played his way into a bigger role.
I mean, he already had done that. Like, I don't know. Like,
that's why I wanted to say it. Like, I don't know what's changed. Anyway, like that is really why I wanted to talk about Monangai. I don't know what changed,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And so like this, let's just talk about the situation in general, because DeAndre Swift practiced yesterday.
Yeah.
He quote unquote vows to play this weekend.
I bet he does.
Which, yeah. Yeah.
You have your day off. You have your day off as a salesperson, and then you come back and you say, "Hey, Joe sold $90,000 worth of equipment." And you're like, "You gonna miss today?" No, I'll be back. I'll be back. I like this guy.
Yeah.
Like this guy
But this isn't a Chuba Hubbard situation, I don't believe either, because DeAndre Swift was playing really good before his game missed. Coming out of the bye, he had almost 400 total yards in his 3 games out of the bye. Was at 70%, 56%, 65% of the touches. He scored a touchdown in all 3 games. Amongst the 23 running backs this season that have 100 or more rushes, he's 6th in success rate, and he leads that group in rate of runs for 10 or more yards. You're probably looking for this if you're a Kyle Monangai bag holder like you are. You're looking for this to try to just, continue to propel to being adjacent to previous Ben Johnson, backfields, to where maybe Monangai can be a David Montgomery type. He can get some goal line carries. The week prior to this, when both played on the opening drive of the game, Monangai came in at the goal line and he didn't score, but that was kind of like what you were looking for. So he, out of the bye, he had 6, 7, and 15 touches in those games. The Bears also have indicated out of the bye, like they want to be a run team. Like they want to be a running team. So that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping you can get kind of like that maybe touchdown dependent flex value, enough touches to be like a back end RB2 that can flirt with, some upside production if he scores a touchdown. But like Monangai was already trending for that before the week against the Bengals. And this is another great matchup too, especially with Swift coming out of the injury, if he does play, to where he probably won't have 80% of the backfield touches, and they can run. This is like the running defense that's like a step above the Bengals. So they can run the ball here. They're going to want to run the ball. If the weather's bad, they'll run the ball. So yeah, I mean, I don't really think anything has changed in terms of getting a large role. I will say though, we do wish that it was just gonna be one guy though in this backfield this weekend.
That would be ideal from a fantasy perspective. I did want to put some numbers to it, just like to point out when we're saying it hasn't changed. In week 7 and 8, and obviously Swift was hurt at that point, right? But at week 7 and 8, Monangai played just 7 fewer snaps, ran 3 fewer routes, had 22 total touches in those 2 games, right? And so we had already seen a swap, as you said. And then you mentioned this, kind of what the Bears want to do and the schedule this week, which is true, but things get a little ugly schedule-wise after this for the Bears, at least a little bit more ugly than, playing the Bengals and the Giants. And I do wonder, and I do wonder, and we mentioned this, I think a couple weeks ago, I do wonder how long this can continue, especially with the Bears defense being as bad as it is when they don't get turnovers, that they're really able to lean into this. And if they're not really able to lean into this, and Monangai is in more of that, just for simplification, David Montgomery role, what happens then, right? If Swift is running a lot of routes in the second half and we're not getting as many rushes, what happens? I assume this is the high point for Monangai. I don't like that, obviously, because I like Kyle Monangai, but I assume this is the high point for him in certain spots, including this week. Even if Swift plays, you could put him in the flex, I think, because they're going to be able to run. But you're really looking, I think, for game script a lot with him will be what I assume moving forward. And I hope I'm wrong about that, right? The other thing about this game, and I wanted to make mention of this game because I do think it's very interesting. You seem to be in on this game in the worksheet, which, by the way, go to sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can find Rich's worksheet previews. He writes up every fantasy relevant player in every single game, every single week. That's at sharpfootballanalysis.com. It's part of our fantasy package, which again, you get for 25% off using promo code SAVE25. So make sure you go check those out. But in your worksheet preview, you had both quarterbacks here as a trust, which is always a good sign that we're going to see high scoring. The total of this game is 47, which is good, but it's not elite. I believe it's 6th on the main slate. And so it does seem like this is more of like I don't want to say sneaky because it is still 47, but this might be a somewhat overlooked game that could really go off, assuming, like you said, the weather cooperates.
Yeah, I got bet down because of the early weather reports. Maybe some potential rain and snow and wind this weekend. So keep an eye on that. But really, it's about both these defenses, right? Like the Giants in general, like have just been since Jackson Dart has taken over, like they've been largely playing in like fun game environments and competitive in game environments. Like not necessarily like where they're threatening to win these games, but like points are scored. Like last week, I mean, we had 58 points scored in that 49ers Giants game and get fantasy points. The week before that, 58 points scored in the Eagles Giants game. The week before that, 65 points scored in the Broncos game. And then the Bears have just been kind of a carnival ride all year. It's just that we've had a couple better carnival rides and it's masked theirs. Like Bengals, Cowboys, like the standouts, but the Bears games are averaging 750 combined yards per game, which is the second most in the league. This is a team that largely, like, this is what every Bears drive on defense goes like this. Did they get a takeaway? Did they not? Then they gave up points. Like, that's like it. Like, they either get a turnover or they give up points on the drive. So, the way Jackson Dart is playing, it's a real bummer that we don't have Malik Neighbors, the way Jackson Dart has played. Because he's making a lot out of, like, when you look at the offense, what Jackson Dart's doing, you're just like, what are we, like, how is he making this happen? It feels a lot like what Drake May was like thrown into last year. Maybe a little bit better because Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton are better than the receivers that the Patriots had, but it's very adjacent.
I was gonna push back.
It's still very adjacent. It's still very adjacent.
Darius Slayton is a real NFL receiver.
Darius Slayton needs to learn to not put his hand down when he has the ball, his hands in the end zone. Like, dude, just fall down and catch the football. Like, don't brace yourself.
Don't put in the paper that he's mad.
Yeah, I was mad at Darius Slayton. But it does feel a lot like that. But so if the weather holds up and Quabert's, even if the weather's bad, both these quarterbacks have enough mobility too to where they could still get there if the passing is like impacted by the weather. And then we expect the Bears to run the football in this game anyways.
Yeah, no, I'm in on this game. I like a lot of pieces. I still like Darius Slayton in this game, for instance. Like, you can't go back. You can't do it.
It makes sense again. Objectively, it's on paper. I just like, it's like every week it's like a play left on the field that's like, buddy.
No, I think it's going to be a fun game, and like we've kind of talked about. I hope the weather cooperates and really allows it to be.
I mean, Loveland looks like he's going to get the start again, and people can chase that. Like, it's fun. I'm not going to play any of the Giants running backs, but it's okay.
That part about it. I mean, while we're in here, to have Tracy, like, one of the things when I still would have bid a lot on Tyrone Tracy based on his usage and all of that. But one of the things I kind of caveated was we've seen this guy get put in the doghouse before on like multiple occasions by this coaching staff. And for him to come out of that game Scadaboo was injured and just be the clear lead guy, like it wasn't even a question, and then come in and play. To be fair, Tracy did get hurt in the second half. And if you like, the split wasn't as severe before that injury. Like, there was a lot of that snap share changed in the fourth quarter after Tracy was hurt. And so, we can try to see what happens moving forward. But like, to have Devin Singletary come out and just play more snaps and get more touches, like, it was just, I was like, what are we doing? How? And if you can't predict that, and if you can't predict Tracy's like involvement in the receiving game, which again with Jackson Dart, because he's going to scramble and stuff, isn't going to be as good. Like, it just isn't. It's upsetting to me. I like hindsight. Obviously, you're not excited if you bid a lot on Tyrone Tracy, but like, I don't know. It's still odd to me what we saw. And
it's why I couldn't play him in DFS last week, and it's unfortunate because a lot of gamers got off of him because of what opened up throughout the week at running back last week. But yeah, I mean, his usage has just been so inconsistent, and I just wasn't going all in on it. Like, he's basically, I mean, shorthand, he's just not as good as Cam Scadaboo, so I never expected him to kind of have that. Yeah.
What a damning indictment. Although I do love you, Cam Scadaboo. But that's the thing we lost to the Cam Scadaboo. And I love Cam Scadaboo. I'm excited. I might be trying to trade him to you in a dynasty league we're in. I can't remember if I sent you that offer. But I love Cam Scadaboo. But the efficiency wasn't great even before the injury for old Cammy Scadaboo. So we'll see. Rich's son. Go and look up Cam Scadaboo's dad. And then look at a picture of Rich Hribar, and it is absolutely uncanny. All right, we got to get on to the next one.
Yeah, my wife hasn't seen to question anything. She hasn't seen this. No questions. Don't show it to her.
All right, our next one. The injury to Joe Alt is a massive concern for Justin Herbert.
I mean, yeah, 100%. Yeah, you have to agree with this. Obviously, and we've already seen this, right? Like the story play out. Maybe Trevor Penning like rechannel something here. I'm gonna say probably not, but
We're rooting for you, Trevor, because we love Justin Herbert. So please,
we have largely an even split this year with like Joe Alt on and off the field. I mean, he has 184 dropbacks. Justin Herbert, that is, with Joe Alt on the field, and 193 with him off the field. So pretty dead even. But with Joe Alt on the field, 8.3 yards per pass attempt, 9.1 air yards per attempt, a 7.1% touchdown rate, 1.9 interception rate. With Joe Alt on the field. With Joe Alt off the field this year, 6.5 yards per pass attempt, 6.9 air yards per attempt, 4.1% touchdown rate, 2.9 interception rate. And what makes it even more damning is the defenses that those came against. Like, you're like, all right, well, there's always noise and splits like this in NFL season, but like they faced the Commanders, the Dolphins, the Giants, and the half of the Titans, like in those games. So it's not very good, right? You're not feeling really great about that. Obviously, it impacts the run game as well. But the big thing was the depth of target stuff. And we were talking about this for a little bit when Alt was out at that time, how it was impacting Quentin Johnston a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's just to mitigate the pressures, they had a quick passing game. And I imagine they'll probably do some of that again, especially against the Steelers defense. I imagine they'll do that too. And we'll see what the Steelers decide to do too, and what they did defensively last week as well. But yeah, it's definitely an impact on Justin Herbert because he was the QB5 or better in his last 3 games. But in those games with Joe Alt out, he was like a floor-based QB2. And I think that's probably what we'll be back in. He'll still have some spikes because Herbert's running a lot more this year. Which kind of anchors him a little bit. And then the talent as he has as wide receivers is still just so good, and the pass catchers in general, including Rondé Gatz, who he really is a wide receiver anyways too. We might as well say he's a receiver. But he'll still have some spike weeks, but I definitely think this removes him from being like a front end QB1.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. Also, their schedule is not ideal in the money weeks. It's not so bad in these next ones. Like, I mean, we'll see what the Steelers defense is. I'm not ready to anoint them after one game. We'll see kind of what they, although we have seen like small changes with the Ravens, for instance, making a like small just positional changes, making a big difference how defense plays. Maybe the Steelers have figured that out, blitzing less, playing Jalen Ramsey at safety. Maybe they figured something out. We'll see kind of where that goes. Then he gets the Jaguars, and they have a bye. Then he gets the Raiders. But after that, I mean, they have the Cowboys in week 16, but after that, the schedule is not great. They get the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Texans, and the Broncos to close it out. Obviously, Broncos in week 18, probably don't care about that for fantasy, but like it's
and
not
they still a bye.
Yeah, and they still have a bye. I mean, like it's not a great run for them. It's a concern for sure. I think he could still I'm going to still play him against the Jaguars. I have him in a dynasty league where I have like Brock Purdy. I'm going to play him against Jaguars. I'll play him against the Raiders, but like it is going to be tricky.
Even with the QBs on bye this week, like he still hung around that fringe like QB1 area for me this week in projections and ranks, just because we're missing some good quarterbacks too. Missing passing games, we're missing some pieces this week.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal, we would call it. All right, one more here. We should be concerned about Daniel Jones and the Colts offense. Speaking of that Steelers defense.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was kind of one of those games where every NFL team has them. You have those turnovers. A couple of them were just kind of like random turnovers too. Like, it's like, what are you going to do about that? Like the Jack Sawyer, the Highsmith tip play, you're just like, well, what are you going to do, man? That was an awesome defensive play. The Josh Downs fumble, right? Like the muff, like those things happens. The quick pressures, the Daniel Jones fumbles, like that's where people do like the Sam Darnold thing last year. Remember when Darnold would have a couple moments last year? He even had a moment in the middle of the season, how people remember. Darnold was like riding real hot, and they played the Jaguars against Mac Jones. They might have outright lost that game. I can't remember, but it was a disaster game. People were like, oh, Sam Darnold's back into a pumpkin. Then he was really good again until the playoffs, and then we had that conversation again about the quick pressures. But
and then suddenly the Seahawks are number 1 seeds. It's really it's that domino meme.
Yeah, but I still think the infrastructure here in this Indianapolis offense is strong. They just had a bad game basically, and to be fair, they still averaged 3 points per drive on the drives they didn't turn the ball over. So like they were still moving the ball fine. And if he just wouldn't have had the turnovers, he would have had a good fantasy day because he had a rushing touchdown. And all the receivers still got there. It was just Jonathan Taylor who really kind of had the down. Oh, and Tyler Warren had the down game because their game plan against Tyler Warren was awesome. But yeah, I'm still going back to Daniel Jones. I still think the infrastructure is good, and we'll have a lot more good Colts games than bad ones.
I agree with you, but I do want to point out two trends that I've noticed with them. The first one is that his two highest sack rate games and his two highest sack per pressure games have come in the last 2 weeks. And one of those is against the Titans, which that seems like a pretty big red flag. 30% sack per pressure against the Titans, 9.1% sack rate in both games. That's a concern, I would say. The other concern I would say,
not for fantasy points.
Sure, but I would say like from like the offense as a whole, that's a
Yeah.
concern to me based on kind of what they were doing and what they were able to do with Daniel Jones earlier in the season. Like that to me reads like something has started to be figured out by opposing coordinators and kind of what they're trying to do. You mentioned how what they were able to do against Warren, at least the Steelers were, which is interesting. And more to that point, his 3 lowest quick throw rates of the season have been the last 3 weeks. Again, it might not mean anything. It could just be a weird thing. But when you start to see trends like that, based on kind of what they were playing or how they were playing early in the season, everything was clicking early in the season, and what they've been able to do against RPO stuff, especially in, with Tyler Warren and getting him involved in things like that's just interesting to me is all I will say. I don't think that it means that they're going to be bad. I just think it's interesting and it's something to watch. And if things do continue to go downhill, then we can maybe look back and try to look at this Steelers game as, something has change, but that's it. I'm still in, and obviously, as we all know, I love Alex Pierce and will be Team Alex Pierce for the rest of time. So we will continue down that path. And I also assume that we're right back in on Jonathan Taylor this week. We're just clicking that button again. We're feeling good.
Well, he plays in London, so we don't have to worry about it.
Sorry, he plays in Berlin.
Germany. I'm sorry.
In Berlin. How dare you
refer to them all as London games, real games. This is Germany, but we don't have to worry about them on the main slate. But this would be a game where the Colts probably should get back to power football and then running that stuff, because the Falcons can put pressure on the quarterback. They take away big throws, but they're light up front and they struggle against power running teams. So like this would be kind of a spot to go back to playing kind of their bread and butter style. But Tyler Warren definitely is a guy that needs that to be working, especially just with the way they utilized him this season. Because like you said, he gets so much stuff off that RPO and the play action stuff. And when the offense has that dynamic removed, that's what kind of hurt him the most. Is like the Colts finally played in a negative game script where they had to chase points, kind of ditch their like base offense the way they want to run, and that really had the negative impact on Tyler Warren the most.
Yeah, I agree. They need to get that back. All right, let's move and do some game previews here. First of all, remember if you want, we're going to talk about a few games here. We're not going to go as far as possible into these as we move through them. If you want an in-depth preview of every single game, every single week, you need to read Rich Hribar's worksheet previews, available sharpfootballanalysis.com, part of our fantasy package. And again, remember, you can get all of everything for 25% off over at Sharp Football Analysis using promo code SAVE25. So make sure you check that out. Also, remember to subscribe on YouTube in your podcast player of choice. Every Friday, we have a weekend preview. It features Ryan McChrystal talking about college football, Joe Gibbs talking about referee storylines, Rich Hribar talking about his favorite prop bets. And if you listen to that podcast, you're going to get a lot of free bets that have been very, very good. Rich has been incredibly hot. Our Warren Sharp's, elevated bet. Now. Well, I've now jinxed him, which was my plan, to be fair. But Warren Sharp's best bet is, I believe, 8-1 now on that show. A lot of free bets, a lot of free winners being given out there. So make sure you go and check that out. And the best way to check it out is to subscribe. Subscribe the podcast, subscribe to YouTube, turn on notifications so you get notified whenever that show drops on Friday morning. All right, let's move on into the game previews. Let's start with the Patriots at the Bucs. Bucs are 2.5-point favorites, a 48.5-point total. I kind of debated talking about this one because we have injury concerns, obviously. But coming out of Wednesday's practice, I don't know if we even have those concerns anymore. No. I just think that Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin aren't playing, right? And so that's kind of where we are. And so that leaves us, to talk about this game, I think, a little more freely. And so I guess we should probably get started here with Emeka Egbuka, because he had his hamstring injury, came back, didn't even miss a week, came back much faster than everybody expected from that. But slowed down before the bye week, I think it's fair to say, was not as productive before the bye week. Do we have any concerns about that? Are we expecting now, after a week off, a little bit healthier, that we're going to get back to kind of the Emeka Egbuka we had earlier in the season?
I think this game is fun because this is volatile, but could turn into a fun shootout too. There's potential for Drake May and Baker Mayfield to just have a game where they go crazy, but also the matchup like definitely inputs a lot of volatility here, especially for like Mika Buka in this passing game. Big picture, and Mika Buka is going to be fine. Like his target share is just going to be so gaudy that like he's going to run into like high wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 plus usage when it hits. With Mike Evans off the field, he's been targeted on 28% of his routes. With Evans and Godwin off the field, it goes to 30%. Like players that get that type of target volume, you're just going to let the fantasy deities take the wheel. This in particular matchup, though, is interesting because Emeka Egbuka and Baker Mayfield have been terrible against teams that play like base man coverage. Emeka Egbuka 1.1 yards per route run against man coverage compared to 2.5 yards per route run against zone coverage. Some of that is where you see like the holy war that was going on with his separation issues. But Baker Mayfield has been god awful against man coverage this year. He averages 4.7 yards per pass attempt against man coverage. Only Carson Wentz is worse. He's completed only 43.6% of his passes against man coverage. Only Cam Ward is worse. And this is like what the Patriots do. But the Patriots haven't been a very good defense either by playing a lot of man coverage. So it could be one of those just happenstances where like you look at some of these splits and we get in the weeds with some of these splits sometimes and don't like always put context like, well, yeah, that you played the Browns man coverage. Like that's totally different than facing, the Giants man coverage, so to speak. So the Patriots haven't been a good pass defense, even though that the style of defense they play, Baker Mayfield hasn't had success again. We saw this a little bit with like Michael Penix last week, who wasn't particularly good. Maybe Drake London, carried him a little bit, but the Patriots are 24th in yards per pass attempt. They're 20th in passing points allowed per game to quarterbacks. So there's some signal here that, maybe it's a better man coverage matchup than the previous ones that Baker Mayfield has had. But that just, I said, adds layer of volatility to the equation. The running backs, you're not interested at all, like coming out of this bye, even with Bucky Irving out. Rashad White has been, what would be your quote you would say for this? I would say he's been cheeks. Maybe adjacent to that, you would have something, but he has faced some tough defenses. But
are you trying to get me to say "ask my dude"? Is that what we're trying to get to?
I did try to coax you into
Ohio State legend, baby. Ask my dude.
Yeah, but with Bucky Irving out, Rashad White, 3.3 yards per carry, 25th out of 26 qualifying running backs in yards per carry, the lowest rate of explosive runs. The Patriots allowed every single running back the Patriots have faced has rushed for fewer yards than they've averaged coming into that matchup. So I'm not chasing Rashad White out of the bye. I could even see Sean Tucker having some more touches and it being a tighter split, but I don't even think like that is going to excite you to chase Sean Tucker because the run defense has been so good. And the other thing with Rashad White is you'd say, all right, well, maybe this is going to we're going to get some passing volume out of him. We've had the passing matchups for Rashad White and he hasn't done anything with them. So you're not even getting that out of him.
Yeah, it hasn't been exciting. And I had kind of talked ahead of the Bucky Irving, or right after the Bucky Irving injury, that like we have seen Rashad White. And by the way, I know Rashad White didn't go to Ohio State. That quote is from Ohio State legend. Tate Martell. But we had a legend, one of their legendary quarterbacks. I think you right up there in the list, right, of Ohio State quarterbacks. So you think Ohio State quarterbacks, you definitely put Tate up there. But the like I had kind of made the point that his efficiency numbers had actually been okay, which being league average for Rashad White is a good thing based on what we've seen early in his career as a runner. And you're right, it just hasn't worked out. And then, like you said, this matchup is not ideal for him. On the other side, the other running back situation, though, we'll see what happens with Ramondre again. We record this on Thursday. Ramondre missed practice on Wednesday. I'm still assuming he's going to be out, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. What I'll have to say is that Terrell Jennings got the touchdown and Terrell Jennings had a lot of carries. And I think that people probably say, well, that's not great. When I dug into the actual usage here, I felt really good about TreVeyon Henderson and the way that TreVeyon Henderson was used. And I'm actually very enthused about TreVeyon Henderson, even in this matchup, if we get Ramondre Stevenson out again, and especially if it turns into a shootout or if the Patriots are having to chase points. Because if you just look at the snap counts, it was 51-17 or something like that. I remember off the top of my head. And then with Henderson ran 28 routes to 4 for Terrell Jennings. Everything was good. Terrell Jennings got he happened to be in the game on the drive that they got the rushing touchdown, right? But he was still outsnapped in goal-to-go situations by Henderson. And he got carries as they were trying to salt away the game. That happened, right? But the fact that Henderson played so much more than him, that it wasn't Jennings stepping into that Ramondre role, and the fact that Henderson had such a much bigger role in the passing game, especially if this game turns in the environment we think. That's all really good for TreVeyon Henderson. And so if people came out of last week disappointed by the share of touches he got, I actually am pretty enthused by the usage we saw from TreVeyon Henderson. I don't know if you think that's wild or not.
No, it was kind of the run out that both parties wanted. Like the TreVeyon detractors can just say, "Oh, look at he didn't score the touchdown," and then everyone that that's 2 weeks in a row now he's played really well. He played 75% of the snaps. Was like you said, just completely dwarfed Jennings in the passing game. Jennings basically came in and got some usage as a runner on his snaps, like the high utilization rate. On the drive, he scored a touchdown. TreVeyon actually had a play that got him across the 50. Terrell Jennings came in and ripped off the run that got him into the red zone, and he just stayed in the game. And then the next play,
it was his one good run too. Like it was like an 11-yard run
and ran a touchdown. So so he was just the right place, kind of right time for that. It wasn't like TreVeyon got a run inside the 5 and then got subbed out for Terrell Jennings. Yeah. Like that didn't happen either. So I think that actually is probably more noisy. The Jennings' goal line touch, I think, there's really no signal there. Because like you said, he out touched him out snapped him inside the 10-yard line the rest of the way too. TreVeyon Henderson did. Not a great rushing matchup for TreVeyon Henderson, but this is kind of the Spider-Man meme game, right? Like the Bucs are 8th in yards per carry to running backs. They have the highest success rate against running back runs, but they are vulnerable in the passing game. They're 30th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs. And then we already saw, TreVeyon get used as a receiver in this game. Also, Bucs, very high blitz rate. Drake May, when he's been blitzed, like his everything just gets reduced. Like he throws he becomes like a really, short passer. So that could be more catches for TreVeyon Henderson as well in this game. So, and then we have like kind of the Kayshon Boutte injury as well that kind of like throws some stuff into the rotation of receivers that the Patriots have. But I think you should be more bullish. It's not a great matchup for like ceiling perspective. Like running backs against the Bucs don't tend to offer a lot of ceiling, but I think like floor-based RB2, and if you have Henderson in a PPR league, you're going to get another week of RB2 plus production. And if you can get a touchdown, then you got some upside.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm glad you brought up the pass catchers here because we don't really know what to expect with, again, we're assuming Kayshon Boutte is going to miss this game. You mentioned kind of like the ADOT stuff, which is interesting as it pertains to Hunter Henry and what we could see from Hunter Henry. There's some good stats. I would encourage you to go read the Hunter Henry part of the worksheet. And there's some good stats in there about him against the blitz. But I wanted to focus a little bit on the receivers. Obviously, Demario Douglas had the big game this past week, but he continued to just not run a ton of routes. I think in total it was 37% drop back route share. But then like it went up after Boutte left, but it still wasn't very high. The guy that really benefited was Kyle Williams, which is, as we talked about, I talked about this on Monday with Freeman, is we had so much kind of like more negative information about Kyle Williams throughout like training camp and the early part of his rookie year. To have Mike Vrabel come out after that game and specifically name check Kyle Williams and say that he's been doing a good job, that's like meaningful to me, I think. And so obviously you're not going out there. I didn't even make Kyle Williams my uncut gem, and you're not going out there and like playing him in a standard league, but it is at least interesting, Kyle Williams this week, especially if this does turn into a shutout, that we can get him those usage down the field. And we know just how good Drake May has been throwing the ball down the field. Well, is that because he was throwing to Boutte? I don't know, but like I do think we could get some interesting usage here from Kyle Williams.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the field for 70% of the dropbacks after Boutte left. And it kind of makes sense that he wasn't really targeted or good last week because that's what the Falcons do. And I can't even put that as some hesitation because I know like the Alec Pierce single high stuff's making the rounds, but like the Falcons are like predicated on not giving up big plays. Like they don't allow, they're actually top 5 in completion rate allowed on throws 10 or more yards downfield. They don't give up a lot of those chunk gains. So it kind of makes sense that like, even if Boutte was in the game, like he might not even have had a good game. Now you're going against an aggressive, it flips. Like you're going against a very aggressive Todd Bowles defense. They play a lot more man coverage. Kyle Williams as a prospect, very good against man coverage. Last year he was actually 2nd in yards per out run in this draft class. So again, like he takes a significant step of faith to like play, outside of deeper leagues, or he's min priced in DFS if you really want to kick. That's actually what I'm like. If I end up stacking this game, I assume I will put Kyle Williams in there because if Kyle Williams hits, I'm going to go ahead and guess that this game has been a shootout. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Like
right.
It's one of those situations where you're saying if this guy hits, maybe he just gets 2 long catches and it does it, right? But if he hits, I will assume there will be a lot of other pieces that'll hit in this game as well. And we're going to have a good Abika Buka game. We're going to have a good game from maybe somebody that I will have as my uncut gem a little bit later
tease,
on.
A tease and a spoil at the same time.
I know, because everybody knows who it is now. But like we're gonna have some good games. So yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, this is a game I probably will like single entry stack for the outcome. Like I said, hyper volatile game, but there is potential here with enough cheap pieces. Even guys, the trickle down stuff, because like Diggs becomes an interesting DFS play too, because like people haven't been playing him because he's kind of like in that mid pricey range. But he could have a little trickle up in terms of like routes and targets too in this game. So it could be a real fun game.
Yeah, no, I'm very into this game. It'll be one of the ones on my main screen for sure as we get through this early slate. A game that's not on the early slate. It's actually on Monday, and again, that is difficult for us because we record on Thursday morning. Again, I'm going to keep saying this because of the Travis Hunter debacle of last week. But so we don't even have an injury report on this. For the Packers, the Packers hosting the Eagles. Packers 2.5 point favorites. It's only a 44.5, point total. So it's not like really a good fantasy game. Like you mentioned before we started recording, this is a lot like Chiefs Bills last week, where like there's not a ton to talk about from a fantasy perspective. Like you're going to play AJ Brown, assuming he's healthy and back. You're going to play Devonta Smith, assuming Saquon's playing. You're going to play him. We kind of know where we are with these two teams. So this is more of like an interesting real life football one on who's going to win the number one seed kind of question. But I do think there are some like interesting topics here. I guess the first would be, what are we doing with the Packers offense now that Tucker Kraft is out? And I don't know if Warren actually wrote about this on the site. You go to Sharp Football Analysis, and he kind of showed how important Tucker Kraft is to this offense. I talked about it on the podcast on Monday with the waiver wire about how Luke Musgrave is going to be a popular waiver ad. He ended up being a popular waiver ad. I understand why. He's the backup to a fantasy TE1. You would say maybe he's going to get there. Luke Musgrave, we don't really have any evidence that he's able to do the things after the catch and as a playmaker that Tucker Kraft is able to do. And that's why Tucker Kraft was fantasy relevant, because of what he could do with the ball in his hands. He wasn't getting the target share you would normally, or the route share. He's running a lot of routes, but because the Packers don't throw a lot, he wasn't getting the number of routes you would normally expect out of a tight end one. He just made things happen because he's Tucker Kraft and he's really good. And it's awful that he's not going to be playing for the rest of the season. So like this sets up a really interesting thing for this Packers offense, and specifically the Packers pass catchers. We also don't know about Matthew Golden. And so it's just a really odd situation. I don't know if you have any insights about kind of what to expect from this Packers passing game and who we might be interested in for fantasy moving forward.
It's a tough one because especially in this current defensive meta, players like Tucker Kraft are just so valuable. Like these tight ends that can just do everything. Impact the run game, impact the passing game, can create with the football in their hands. It's a real tough loss. I mean, the Packers are fourth in yards per play with him on the field this season. On the plays without him, they go to 24th. They're 29th in success rate with him off the field. Small sample stuff, and this is a team I expect to be better than worse. Because Matt LaFleur has done such a good job over the course of his career, and he had good offense before they had Tucker Kraft. But like you said, it's Tucker Kraft was a guy who could have 6 targets and make that work for fantasy football. Luke Musgrave, I mean, is he going to be a guy that if he has a 4 target game, can he be a tight end one? Probably not. I probably would bet against it. So we're gonna have some dominoes moving. You brought up the Golden injury. Like right now, as it stands, like behind Romeo Doubs, like Christian Watson is like the de facto dude now in this offense. So it's crazy because, I thought like there might be some ramp up for Christian Watson. They just had to throw him in the deep end. Like, dude, we need you.
He was at 73% route participation last week.
Yeah. Last week was at 79% last week. He's got a big play in each game. We know he's still capable of that. So he's still fast and big. That hasn't changed. I'm also curious though, coming out of this bye, to see how the Eagles adjust, because this was a team that clearly did not want to play Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo to the degree they have. And
to be fair, understandably so.
Yep. And we have been talking about for a couple weeks, it's like, man, they're going to have to bite the bullet and just move Cooper Regine outside just to mitigate disaster. Then they bring in Michael Carter. They take a flyer on Jalen Alexander. So they have so I'm really curious to see like how the cornerback deployment is for the Eagles. So that's something I'll be watching as well, coming out of the bye for them. I'm also very curious too for the Eagles, if they get Cam Jurgens back, how much under center are they playing? Because they haven't been playing under center with Brett Toth, who's struggled with shotgun snaps. But then Jalen Hurts said, like, we were going to do that anyways if Jurgens was in. So, like, all right, look, show me now, in a way. So, like, I'm very curious on that reveal. And I'm curious, obviously the Saquon stuff. I'm not ready to say, like, that's completely in the bag. The Eagles just haven't, like, until they actually start mounting, like, what they're doing on a consistent basis, they're still going to be a team that, like, we are just going to handle with, like, a lot of volatility as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think again, and this is in the worksheet preview, go and read it. The under center stuff with the Eagles and just what it allows them to do from a specifically play action. And we know that about NFL offenses, under center play action is just far more effective than shotgun play action. What they're able to do.
I'm looking at Cardinals.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, that is the thing. Like, people are going to make jokes about Kyler Murray, which, it is what it is, right? I may have said that when he scrambles, he looks like a baby who stole his keys from his mother. Like, I may have said that. I still wish the best for Kyler Murray and his foot injury. But yeah, just like structurally being able to play differently is important. And also, just as an aside, as we move into draft season, thinking about that with the quarterbacks that are coming out, and maybe looking at that.
Yeah, because the game has changed. Like the quarterback height stuff wasn't like, it became less of it became less of mattering to the degree because, like, it was more spread offenses, and now that offenses are condensing, you want to be able to run that play action stuff. And listen, your 5'9" quarterback can't take snaps under center. Like, I mean, that's the way it is. You can't see, like, Tua and Brock Purdy have openly talked about this, of like their height being like a hindrance and being able to see things on the field, and like their pre-snap diagnosis mattering more for than other quarterbacks. But like, that's why Kyler like physically can't play under center to the degree of other quarterbacks. He can't see, like, so like that changes the dynamic.
And it's already high, and it's already hard enough to see if you're dropping back and faking a handoff. Like, it's already hard enough. Like, there's a reason why it's difficult to do.
Now, Jalen Hurts is big enough, so that's why I'm curious to see, like, if it changes. Like, he had just for his career, like, never been he's always been like kind of a static shotgun guy, even go back to college. But like, I'm very curious to see if, like, they can start adding this as part of their game. Like, basically the shorthand is, like, it's hard to find Drew Brees. Like, if you can get Drew Brees, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a hack. It's a team building hack. Just draft the next Drew Brees. I mean, it's not that hard. Just draft the next Drew Brees. It'll be fine. Also, I really enjoy how we've gone from the 2026 quarterback. Look out for this 2026 quarterback class to now everybody's like, well, I don't know about this one, but the 2027 class. Like,
doesn't that happen every year? Doesn't it feel like that?
It's just beautiful. I mean, and I wanted it to work out for Drew Aller, obviously, and I'm still hoping for the best for him. I still like Garrett Nussmeier, by the way. I'm gonna maybe plant my flag there before we get into draft season. But that's a conversation for a few months from now. We'll skip that conversation.
We'll have them.
One more thing here with I wanted to bring up the Detroit at Washington game. The Lions are 8-point favorites. It's not expected to be a obviously competitive game with that line, but it is a 49.5 point total. So, we can expect some scoring, we would hope. And there are two kind of questions here. The first one is, are we worried about Jahmyr Gibbs, which I feel like is a question I ask every week. Are we worried about this?
I mean, the levels of worry, I mean, we saw, because we were just like the week before he had 200 yards. Like the last time we see him, like, we know the upside's still there, but like, we are not getting the payout though, for sure. Especially people that had him 101. Like, there was a definite a Jahmyr Gibbs 101 overall contingency. The interior offensive line has been a problem, and now was it Chris Mahogany's going to miss? Dan Campbell just said at least into December. Like, it's going to be an extension of time. Taylor Decker also left the game last week, and we'll see. He's been in and out of the lineup a little bit. But, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs has 3 RB1 scoring weeks. Now, he's had a high floor relative for the bulk of these, but he has had 2 games outside of the top 30 now in his past 3. I mean, listen, Brian Flores just put him in hell on Sunday. Like, what more can you really say about it? Like,
when the coaching staff after the game, like, says, oh, we messed this up and we put him in a bad position. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes you get beat. Like, it is what it is. Sometimes you get beat, and they beat him. And it is, as it turns out, Brian Flores is a really good defensive coordinator. That's the takeaway from this.
Yeah, I mean, he forced Jahmyr Gibbs to have to step up and pick up interior blitzers, like, on repeat. Like, he was in pass protection for a career high 15 snaps on Sunday. He wasn't good on those snaps either. Well, because he's a 200-pound back. Like, what do you want for like he's blocking dudes like Andrew Van Ginkel? Like, good luck, man. Like, like Jamar Gibbs isn't going to win that very often.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the usage for him has been very catawampus though. Anyways, before this, like his passing work has been like up and down. The explosive runs are way down this year. I know he had the 90-yarder, so he's still capable of it. But I don't know. It's just like. The Lions have just felt the hair off all season, and maybe we were always going to get that through regression and the coaching changes, but they're still very good, and Jahmyr Gibbs is still capable of having spike weeks, but he has not been nearly as good as guys like Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey this year. But a lot of the first-round picks have been a little volatile. You know, Saquon definitely has been here when we've rode that journey too as well. But you just have to just grin your teeth and bear it, I think. Like, what are you going to do? He might be a guy, though, that is a guy that could be traded here, like in your leagues, because he still carries so much upside on a game-to-game basis and name value. Like, you might be able to get some really good players for him.
But like, I also think that as we learned in that one game, he is still explosive. We haven't seen the explosive runs, but he is still explosive.
Just same thing with Saquon. Like physically, like he wasn't getting long runs, but you're like, there's still like, there's nothing that you're like physically, there's nothing that looks wrong here. Like nothing looks wrong with Jahmyr Gibbs. It's just kind of the way he's been used, the utilization, and then the offense just not being nearly as good. The run game, particularly, not being as good as it was last year.
Yeah, I'm still not selling on Gibbs. Like I understand what you're saying. Like even like from name value you can get it, but like I'm just gonna hold and hope for the explosives, right? Because especially as we get into the playoffs and it's a single elimination, like him breaking off one big play can just matter. And so I'm gonna hold on to a guy that.
And if there's ever a point again, like the contingency upside here is still massive. If there's ever a point that David Montgomery misses time, like it was the fantasy playoffs last year when David Montgomery missed time and Gibbs was the dude you needed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's more about that Detroit and Washington game again in the worksheet previews. There's interesting usage stats about that Washington backfield, about Marcus Mariota and what we're doing with that entire Washington offense, which unfortunately might be nothing.
Tough year, Commanders. Maybe I'll do an uncut gem from that game.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal at the moment. But go make sure.
And regression works in mysterious ways, man. Like it's not always clean. We're like. You have because the Commanders were a team that were like a major signal.
Sometimes it's dislocated elbows. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, and not even before that. I mean, that's his third injury. Jaden Daniels just hamstring. So Terry McLaurin, the holdout, was behind the 8 ball. He's just seemingly can't get healthy. And to be fair, the Commanders did build their team around a lot of old dudes, and they were counting to one sustain being good, and now they're hurt and old, which is not a really good recipe. But yeah. It's a tough one. Tough one.
Not happy about it. And I would like to see our good friend Bill come out the other side, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But make sure you head over to Sharp Football Analysis, check out the write-up for that game and all the games. Again, every fantasy relevant player previewed in-depth stats about all of them from Rich Hribar. It's called the worksheet. It's part of our fantasy package, which again, you get for 25% off using promo code SAVE25. All right, let's move on to Uncut Gems. We had ourselves a bit of a good week last week in Uncut Gems with our picks. As always, like these are players who are available on a lot of waiver wires. They're on benches in deep leagues. So like we're trying to find somebody that's if you really need a guy for that flex spot, there's someone you can go out and get on the wire and add to your team and hope for the best. So who do you got here, Rich?
Yeah, I was gonna do like Hunter Henry, and you told me just do Darius Slayton again, but with the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and who's the other good passing team on bye? That's eluding me right now.
The Bengals.
Yeah, with the Chiefs, Cowboys, and Bengals on bye, we're missing a lot of wide receiver firepower. So I wanted to go with the wide receiver. A lot of teams might be scrambling. So we brought up Kyle Williams. Darius Slayton's probably not available if you can get him. So I'm going to stay in the Commanders game and go at Jalen Lane.
Here we go.
As a body you need. Now we know Chris Moore is going to be the Terry McLaurin fill-in. Like he's been doing that, but like he's essentially just been like getting cardio. He doesn't earn targets. Still, he's been targeted on 10% of his routes, less than a yard per out run. But Lane's getting an extra bump because of the season-ending injury to Luke McCaffrey, because McCaffrey and Jalen Lane have basically been like splitting the snaps outside of Debo and Lane. So Lane now, when McCaffrey got injured last week, he was on the field for 70% of the dropbacks. It's probably what we're looking at, like a 70% dropback rate in a game like that where the the Commanders are probably going to have to throw the football too, by the way, and be chasing points. But with McLaurin off the field, Lane has been targeted on 19% of his routes, 1.4 yards per hour, nothing modest. But against man coverage, he's been targeted on 25% of his routes at 3.4 yards per route run. Very small samples, but the Lions run the 4th highest rate of man coverage. It's a deep dart here, but I wanted to give at least one that was maybe available on waivers for people.
That's a good one. I will tell you that Tez Johnson is out there. Was out there. I didn't expect to have him in the list of my waiver pickups this week, but he was out there in a lot more leagues than I expected him to be. I wonder if people were expecting Chris Godwin to come back or something like that. But Tez Johnson, as I kind of hinted at before, is going to be my guy. 81.5% route participation in 2 games before the bye, target on 22.7% of his routes. As we said, it doesn't seem like Chris Godwin's going to play this week. Miko Buko will be back healthier. So like you would assume he's going to, continue like Rich says, to command a lot of targets, 30% target rate per route with Evans and Godwin off, but they need a second option. Johnson could see some of his actually old Oregon teammate, Christian Gonzalez, but he also moves inside around the formation like Ibuka does. Ultimately, I think you're getting with Tez Johnson, the number 2 option in the passing game for an offense that's going to struggle to run the ball in a game that has shootout potential. And so that I think is valuable, especially like you said, in a week this week that has so many wide receivers on bye. So I'll take Tez Johnson. I'm also in on Jalen Lane. You mentioned Darius Slayton. We're still always in on Darius Slayton as well. Like there are lots of wide receivers out there that you could make a case for. Parker Washington, obviously, I assume he was picked up everywhere, but Parker Washington, there's lots of names out there where you can try to fill some holes, I think, at wide receiver this week. All right, that's it for us. We're done. We got our uncut gems. We're heading into week 10. Still can't believe it's already week 10. Like it's just flying by. Thanksgiving will be here soon enough. We appreciate you listening to us, sticking with us. Make sure you subscribe wherever you find us, either your podcast player of choice or over at YouTube. If you're subscribing at YouTube, click that notification button. Make sure you're sticking around to watch that podcast, listen to that podcast with Warren and Rich and Joe and Ryan. Lots of good bets on there. Head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and use that promo code SAVE25. Get access to all of Rich Hribar's work. That includes the worksheet previews, his fantasy rankings. And then later on Saturday, we release his DFS picks for the week. Make sure you check all of that out. And Rich and I will be back to talk with you next week.